How's it going? How are you?
We're great. We're great. The bubble seems to be working at this stage in the game, and it took a little bit of I think maneuvering and some a little bit of anxiety when we first entered the bubble for about 10 days to 2 weeks, and now I think everybody's really settling in, and the narrative has changed to the soccer side and the games, and it's all about the competition now, and trying to get our group out of this group that we're in to advance into the knockout rounds. The early game against Toronto, our first game, there was a lot of hiccups just to get that game going. It was rescheduled because Toronto came in a few days late due to testing, and then it got canceled because we both had a COVID case. Fortunately, it was both had a false positive, which is not necessarily the right term, I know, as we learn more about this, but it was good that it wasn't a symptomatic case on either team, but that also pushed the game now till the next morning. So leading up to that first game, it was anything but normal from a preparation standpoint. And that is tough on the minds of the players and coaches, and controlling and making sure your build-up is exact as you would want it to be. And that's just not the case here with this tournament. And being prepared for that, and being accepting in that, and being mentally tough, and not getting too up or down through these twists and turns, I believe is very, very important in dealing with this tournament. And I give our guys a lot of credit to get something out of that game. And so now we put ourselves in an okay spot playing New England tomorrow. Hopefully we can get the right result and move into that knockout round.
Can you talk a little bit about that sort of daily routine? It's so different than when you're at home. What does a training look like? Or are there multiple teams out there at a time? Can you just sort of describe the whole training, going to practice process?
So you have two periods in the day where you can train, and it's you either have like a 10:30 training and a 7:30 training, or there's I think an 8 o'clock training and a 9:30 training at night. So if you want to do 2 a days, those are your two areas, in the morning and at night. And depending on how when your game is, if it's a 10:30 game, you might want to prep with those trainings in the evening leading up to it. If you have a morning game, you might want to get their clocks, their body clocks, more used to getting up earlier and having those trainings in the morning. So that's, each coach has to figure that out on what's best for the group in preparations for the game. The actual field situations, it's great. A lot of people have been to this complex that are engaged in soccer in this country. They have tournaments here all the time. I think I was one of the first players ever play here with the ACC tournament back when UVA, they hosted the ACC tournament, man, when this thing just started. So it's kind of nostalgic to be back here. But the fields are, I'm not sure how many they have. It might be upwards to 14 beautiful Bermuda fields, and nobody was on them for a while because of the COVID situation, and they were shut down. So they're in perfect condition, and that field, and yes, there's fences in between that are blocked with windscreens, so you can't see into everybody's trainings, but you still kind of can, and you can hear the energy of other teams, and you do when you're out there. There's 4, 5, at times 6 other teams in your vicinity of MLS teams training at the same time, which is a very, very rare thing. That never happens. So yeah, you could sneak a look or two about what other teams are doing, not necessarily tactics, but just exercises as you're walking to and from the bus. And there's a really good energy about that. And I think when the guys show up, there's no excuses as far as putting in the work and the training and the equipment that we have. We've brought a lot down, as most teams has. Everybody's packed a U-Haul truck or two and drove it down here to Florida, full of your product and Kwik Goal products. That's helping us out down here. So we want for nothing from a soccer standpoint.
How does, it's so different in terms of obviously those early versus super late games, tighter windows in between games. How does that change how you prepare, and how does that change how you prepare the team?
Well, the 8 o'clock games, in which we have tomorrow, that's business as usual. That's the time most of our games are, from 7:30, 8. So the guys are really well versed in how to go about those games. The two that are tricky are the 9 o'clock in the morning, and then the 10:30. Those are different than what we're used to. And our next game will be in the evening at 10:30. Our first one was at 9. So what we did in the 9, we didn't do too much. We trained in the morning, so we didn't do night trainings. So we got their clocks somewhat ready to be ready to have action in the morning. But to have a game at 9 o'clock, I don't think any of these guys have done that since like a youth tournament back in when they were like 13, 14 years old. It just doesn't happen. So that was new. We woke them up. They woke up around 5:30. Pregame meal was 6 to 6:30. They could come down either at 6 or 6:30 and get their pregame meal in. We adapted the night before what we ate. We wanted a substantial meal late night for them to, and then, but that's about it. It's a one-off. So you're not going to for 3 days leading up to that. You're not going to wake your boys up at 5:30 in the morning to prepare for this. It was just a one-off, and you try to be business as usual and be ready to adapt and slug a couple extra espressos and go play. The tricky part for that was we showed up the day before we got up in preparation for a 9 o'clock game. So we went through 6 o'clock pregame, went to the field, and it got canceled. And then it was rescheduled the next morning. So we had to do that again. So for 2 days, they woke up at 5:30, and that was a difficult period for us. In particular, during that time, we were quarantined in our rooms because one of our players tested positive for COVID. So it was a very, very strange 48 hours. And again, I go back to giving the guys a lot of credit for getting something out of that game against Toronto when there was a lot of things that weren't in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously I was hard at work, so I definitely wasn't watching the game. But man, that was crazy. How did you have to do anything on the sideline, or is that just the guys saying it's a tournament, we need something out of this game, and just gutting it out?
I think there's certainly a belief that you have as a group that you're able to do that, right? Down a man, 94-degree weather, to still again have that grit, that moxie, that resiliency to get something out of that game. Again, says a lot about the personalities of our players and hopefully the culture that we can that we have here at DC United. However, we also have to take that and say and still be realistic with the performance. And the performance in the first half was not good enough. how much of that was because of the preparation, and there, believe me, there's a million different excuses we can put on the board that to scapegoat, what was just not a great performance in the first half. But the substitutions really played a part into that game. Their ability to come off the bench, have high energy. The fact that we have 5 substitutions in this goes a long way in that, because of most teams are not fit. And so it does allow you to have this kind of these crazy last 15, 20, 25 minutes where there's a lot of new people coming onto a field at the same time. And I think that part of that is, if you get that right, you really benefit from it. If you get it wrong and you're out of whack and you have a lot of subs on there that aren't really, in sync with everybody, it can go wrong. And you see these games, the last 15 minutes is it's a show. You look at the San Jose game last night. I mean, you don't want to turn these games off early because of the heat, all the factors that go into these games, the fitness levels, and that teams are not at 100% sharpness. And the brains go down the stretch, the bodies go, and you see mistakes and you see goals.
Can you describe, the bubble a little bit? Like, what are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? How does a normal day work? Right? I wake up in my room, I go get breakfast.
That's the start. Yeah, that is definitely the start. Well, let's take, for instance, today.
Like a training day, normal training.
I'll give you today, right?
Yeah.
We wake up, because this is a day before a game. It's a testing day, a COVID testing day. The day before was a testing day too. I'd say on average, every other day we're getting tested. So we wake up at 8. You're down at the testing area of the hotel. The other hotel, we're in a smaller hotel. There's a bigger hotel. In between is a lake, and around it is a kind of a resort, a bunch of pools and a few restaurants within those 2 hotels. So you go to the testing. After the testing, you come back. You have breakfast as a group. There was a lift. We have a gym that you have access to once a day at a certain time. So our gym was after breakfast. So a few guys go in there and do some work. Then it's staff meetings for me of getting ready for New England and finalizing how we're going to go about them, both again to exploit their weaknesses and also protect against some of their strengths. And then we have a meeting at 1, then lunch after that, and then the guys have a little downtime before training. Their gear ends up being at I think 4:35. We pick up gear on the bus around 5:36, usually with the understanding that there will be lightning and we will probably have to sit outside the bus for at least a half hour to an hour. That's at least been the last couple of days. There's a lot, every day there's some type of thunderstorm and coming through, and that throws another kind of wrinkle into this. But then we get our training. We've chosen to, these days, because we're leading up to the 8:30 or the 8 o'clock game, that all our trainings will be in the evening. So we train and we get back and we have dinner, and that's what this looks like. And tomorrow we'll have a typical game day routine where we have our meal schedules. The only real event that the players will have to do is make some type of we call it testosterone boost. So the morning of a game, especially when the game is a little later, we try to get we try to get the testosterone levels a little high. We do that in a whole bunch of different ways. Sometimes we'll do something as silly or as a shadow box. We partner them up, and you try to slap each other, and and then we there's all these little games to again get that testosterone as high as possible in the morning. So when you are playing your game in the evening, it's not foreign to you to get that strength back for the game. And it's fun. The guys always have a lot of fun. There's all strengths coaches come up with all these new games, and for about it's 20 minutes of intensive fooling around, essentially, but to get the heart rate high really quickly.
What have you been doing on your little bit of downtime? Yeah, I hear you're allowed to golf. There's mini golf. There's pools. Or are you hitting the tapes?
A little bit of everything. You have enough time in the day where again, my family's not around, and I don't have anything other than again, my priorities are making sure this team's prepared for trainings and moving in the right direction, and prepared for the games, and then working on my general well-being and my mental health. And that's, to me, that's exercising and making sure, I get my my strength day in and my swimming in. They have a great pool here, and I'm an old man and my body hurts. So, jumping in the pool is a great thing for me. So they have a great lap pool here. So, working on my mental health and making sure the team's in a good spot and managing this group. But again, the overall setting here is great. It is like a preseason, more intensive because the results, the games are real and they matter, whether it's the points or actually getting out of the group phase. I tell people that it's not that much different than being at a World Cup or an Olympics or a World Championship. It's about the same time. You have to go through your group phase. And when you're in these, whether we were in Germany or whether I was in the Olympics in Australia or Malaysia for the World Championships as a youngster, you're doing a lot of hotel living anyways in those circumstances, because it's the priority is soccer. It's very, very intensive. You're not out and about. You're not out at night. So this really reminds me of those. A little bit strange that you can't exit the facility, but the facility is so vast. I haven't felt cooped up, or as opposed to if we were on a smaller and just a hotel and you couldn't go outside the parking lot. This is good living. You can walk around, and so it's been good. I think now that the narrative has changed and it's about the soccer, and the soccer is getting better, the quality is getting higher. There's been more exciting games as of late. I think it's going to be a very successful tournament.